to sell a production course. Idea is to have like 10 streams about different stages of the developing the game and growing the team, starting with its inception, which we were talking today, going on with the various landmarks that in different manner defined your game and project and team and growth and what changes and how do you treat them differently depending on which part of the pipeline you are, and so on. I want to quickly talk about today's tool. It's also a kind of a creep I will look at occasionally to keep the conversation going, because again, this type of courses, you need to have a little bit of agenda and a table of contents, because otherwise you get stuck like in the process a little bit, and then it's always good to have a plan, isn't it? So today we're gonna talk about like where actually games come from, and a lot of people just don't talk about these things, you know, like they don't talk about how idea of the game emerges and why people do that, and like what are the decisions associated with the initial stages. And I find it a little bit weird and unreasonable, because decisions that are made at the beginning of every process are essentially super important, and they will influence everything that's gonna go and will be happening through the whole course of lifetime of the project and the game and the studio. I will use this chart in Miro. I'm not a huge fan of dragging stickers around the screen, you know, like, but I think that this is the most efficient way to substitute the whiteboard, which I would typically prefer. And we'll go through the following subjects. Introduction, for people who just picking this up, and because like these 10 streams would be a part, well, 11 with an introduction would be a part of the separate section of the channel. I'll introduce myself, probably a little bit differently this time than I do that at the shows or like at other occasions. I want to make an introduction about myself related to production, because like we're talking about production and video game development in the first turn, and I want to make this relevant, and also for people who would be asking who is this dude and why he thinks he can share this experience. I want to basically answer this question, you know, like, and talk a little bit about my relevant experiences to production and game development in general. We'll discuss where games come from and why people do games in general. It's important to define motivation and why people start to do this process and how the idea emerges originally. A very big choice in between solo or team, which is truly definitive, because like solo is a completely different gig. People who do game solo do it for a variety of different reasons, and they do it in a different manner. And team, and when you choose to develop anything in the team, you effectively making the choice that anything that you do in the future will depend a lot from people communication in general. You would need to start treating this whole idea of communication seriously. I want to talk about the team disposition for original IPs and team disposition for other circumstances. Subject that been not really described anywhere with attention that it should be described. Discuss different pro and contras of different type of composition. Then a little bit counterintuitive game and game definition goes about the team composition and everything that we do, and I'll explain why. An important question of for whom, what kind of game, what platform, and for what specifically you want to develop the game. Discuss optimal strategy for different strategies for different kind of games and for different team dispositions at your initial stages of doing anything literally. First steps on setting the field of development. Your initial notes, scatter materials, and prototyping. Prototyping is a subject I will be talking a lot over the streams, forming hypotheses and testing them, and aligning the effort before actually going to the pre-production. We would be talking today about the initial team compositions in general. If you think that you have an idea of a different composition in mind, and we can basically try to map out something super quickly and all those things. Let's start. Hello again. You know, like this guy you see has been 25 years in the video game development, and I have started well back in the day. You know, like games always been my super passion. I've been taught by my grandmother to read text and books at 4 years. And I played my first video game about I've been 6 years, I think. And that's been a ZX Spectrum game about ninjas fighting each other. I've been introduced to arcade machines a little bit before that at 6, where I just fell in love with video games and stuff. It's always been a big part of my life. I would say in many senses dominant. I started to develop video games back in my town. I started from a story you can think of being like every beginning of the story for bootstrapping. While I've been in university and I've already been somewhat involved with the video game industry, I've been selling video games in retail, and I was writing for articles as a game journalist. I came up with this concept being called a Northern World, and for myself and 3 of my friends from the university, Vitaly, Roman, Max, we started to get together in my 1-bedroom apartment at the kitchen every weekends, and we basically started to develop the game. We started to write concepts and write the story and do some concept art and do some initial code, and that was the beginning. No resources, no money, nothing, just clear intention, to do something great. And that was the late 90s, so not a lot of internet, still a lot of Fido. It's been quite challenging. Very soon we been picked up as a team as a company called Blood Games, one of the few companies in my hometown, where we've been working on this game and then other games for some years. I think it's been about 3 years. After which I went to JC Game World and worked as the capacity of PR executive for about 4 years on Stalker and Cossacks, and particularly there's been a game called Heroes of Annihilated Empires, which was a strategy game and fantasy, which was pretty much like Cossacks. After which I went out and built a company with partners that been called Black Queen Foundation, which developed, I want to say, about 8 or 9 titles, and also been working at the big games as a contractor, for a bunch of companies like Square Enix and big cartoon American company, and bunch of others, 505 as well, and so on. After that, I went to work in Epic. At BWF, I've been an executive producer, and I've basically been a person behind most of the games who's been launched to the market, and person who's been working in production hands-on for 8 years. After that, there's been times of Epic Games. I spent 2 years as an evangelist, and then another 5 years as a business development and licensing person, working at the Eastern Europe and CIS and occasionally a few other countries. And with that being over, I've been doing a whole bunch of things, trying to challenge my career path with new expertise type of things. But these things been always relevant to production in general. It's either been working at the financial side of at the funding, being a person who would evaluate the games, how they build, what are the pluses and minuses, the problems with team compositions, and providing the reviews for decisions, if one or another company get invested or not. Then working at the XLAXO, I've been working the large infrastructure of based Unreal project as well, which has been effectively production. So production has always been a little bit a part of what I do. Again, I'm doing this course because it's weird times to me. People talk about everything but essential production elements and how to build the studio from the ground and up. I would say that a lot of things going on are extremely speculative to my opinion, and I think that someone needs to talk about very basic things, right? I think that they're also massively useful. And I think I can also talk about that because with those things being useful to you being common for me, because I can share some of the personal experiences on real examples, and showing you some real documents and the stuff that you can build in a production. So where games come from? Games effectively come from people, we all know that. And they can go from a couple of different sources. It could be a person or a conversation between two people. And games come with the variety of different type of motivation. These motivations, they are very different, and people don't talk about them in a way that they should really. And the motivation to make games, they are important because it's important to preserve and remember why you got into this gig in the first place. And the reality is that for a lot of people, it's a different type of the thing, or it's a combination of things. Those things can be for the sheer love of gaming, because you like games and you want to build one. It can be money. People can go into development because they thought or they heard about video games, are a source of how to become an IT guy or a girl or whatever, how to become rich and become a wealthy person. It can be money, definitely. It can be fame. It can be as much as I will build the greatest game in this genre and people will know me for it, and I will be known for it globally, and it's a powerful motivation for a lot of people. Can be ego, which is connected to fame. Can be vanity, the same thing. You think that you're better than everyone else and you want to do something to prove that, and being a creative person, you go for it. It can be as much as to be belonging somewhere, because and people do a lot of things to not be lonely in general, and a lot of people in the video games development production are introverts. I mean, like, can they come up with the ideas that will help them to be connected to a larger medium and to the larger community, and to be able to do stuff, or not being lonely is a thing definitely for lots of folks. Or it can be something simple, like I'll buy myself a Ferrari was a popular thing back in the day. Or as simple as I don't like current games and I build one for myself, etc. Right? Because like motivations are super various.